Prisoners that killed cellmates reacting to life sentences. Because it houses horrifying criminals who have committed horrifying crimes against humanity. Prisons are never happy places for people, and we wouldn't expect them to be. However, did you know that some murderers have committed their crimes while incarcerated and are currently serving another sentence? We're going to show you 5 insane prisoners who killed their cellmates in this video, so buckle up and watch. Number 5. Stephen Sanders. The murder of his fiancée in Wayne County in 1991 resulted in him being sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is now serving his sentence. Nevertheless, Sanders committed another murder 24 years later, while he was incarcerated at the Second Howard Correctional Facility in Fullerton. When Theodore Dyer Doya killed his cellmate, he was already serving a term of 25 to 50 years for first-degree criminal sexual behavior with a 9-year-old girl. This was the most serious sexual offense, including penetration, that he had committed. Because Anderson was required to finish serving his life sentence without the possibility of parole after finishing his sentence for Dyer's murder. The counsel representing Anderson, James Gust, argued that the sentence was problematic under Michigan law. As a result, Anderson had to die and resurrect before he could even begin serving his sentence. Number 4. Shane Goldsby. The fourth Shane Goldsby, a 26-year-old prisoner, was sentenced to 43 years in prison after he stole a police car and engaged in a wild chase that resulted in him smashing the vehicle and injuring an officer in 2017. Following this incident, Goldsby was placed in the Airway Heights Correctional Facility and made cellmates with Robert Munger, a 70-year-old man who had been found guilty of numerous counts of child molestation and child pornography. Things took a turn for the worse when Goldsby overheard Manga boasting about his misdeeds, some of which included the same kind of crime that his younger sister had suffered years earlier. Goldsby was disturbed by this and gradually started piecing together who he was sharing a cell with. Despite his request, Goldsby attempted to control his rage but was unable to do so when the Manga kept making fun of his sister. He struck the Manga from behind, knocking him to the ground, and then kicked and hit him 14 times in the face and 4 more times on his head. One day, Goldsby took a violent turn and killed himself. Despite Goldsby's challenging upbringing, he was found guilty of secondary murder and given a 33-year prison sentence, with an additional 3 years of parole after serving out his sentence. While some contend that taking another person's life is never acceptable, others counter that what Goldsby did was what any reasonable big brother would have done for their family. Number 3. Anthony George. In October 2013, Anthony George, also known as Anthony Morris George, an inmate in the Elkin Middlesex Detention Center, was accused of killing Adam Cargis, his cellmate. Cargo, 29 of Sarnia, was assaulted in his cell 2 weeks into his sentence for using stolen identities to purchase cell phones. The MBC staff found his body in the jail showers at around 10 and the following morning, and an autopsy determined that he died from blunt force trauma. After being charged with the death of Craig Gus, Anthony, who had a violent past, entered a guilty plea to the second degree in a London courtroom in 2017. This came nearly 4 years after Craig Gus passed away at the Trouble London jail, which surprised Kevin Egan, the London lawyer representing hundreds of ENDS inmates in a class action lawsuit against the province over the poor conditions inside the jail. He said, "I guess it's a little anticlimactic, given we had expected to hear several weeks of testimony about the events leading to Adam's death." George grew up in Kettle Point First Nations in the woods. His parents divorced when he was 11, and his mother passed away shortly after. This led to a lifetime of drinking and grieving, which ultimately landed him in Fairness. Adam Cargis was a prisoner in a cage, and Bruce Thomas said during sentencing that he had little chance against the much larger George. Yet, George's guilty plea, his difficult life, and his First Nations ancestry convinced the judge to grant him the earliest opportunity at parole. George will have to spend at least 10 years in Lyford prison before being eligible for parole as soon as is legally permissible. This will allow society to decide whether or not to forgive him. The judge made this decision. Additionally, Thomas suggested that George be given indigenous-based prison therapy. George testified in court that he was manufacturing alcohol on the day Adam passed away and that he thought of Adam as a friend. He said that when Adam arrived in London, I told him to come down to my range and I would take care of him. That night, we got locked in a cell, and I asked the guards to call for a phone call, but they refused, saying that I was intoxicated. That's what initially enraged me, and after that, I blacked out and didn't even know what happened. The judge was alarmed by George's statement and twice asked him if he meant for Cargus. Number 2. Dizzy Madden. Dizzy Madden, a prisoner in Alga County, was found guilty of second-degree murder and handed a sentence that would run concurrently with his present sentence of at least 16 years and up to 30 years for assaulting another person with the intent to commit violent robbery and carjacking. The sentence would run concurrently with his current sentence. It was stipulated that the defendant would serve a minimum of 60 years and a maximum of 90 years in jail. Officials stated that Madden was found guilty after a trial that lasted for 5 days in April. During the trial, a jury of 12 individuals deliberated for 2 hours before reaching a verdict of guilty. Madden's cellmate at the Olga Correctional Facility, Rodriguez Montez Burke, was discovered dead and covered in blankets in their cell. Madden was also found unconscious. Burks had been found to have suffered a closed head injury, as determined by an autopsy. It was the contention of the prosecution that the authorities at the jail would have separated the two convicts if they had both pleaded to be relocated. Karen Barman, the prosecuting attorney for Olga County, emphasized that during the trial, jurors heard testimony from both prison guards and inmates who had different points of view regarding the relationship between Burks and Madden. It was generally agreed upon by the authorities that Burks could get away from an undesirable cellmate, despite the fact that they believed Burks felt frightened by Madden. It was argued by the defense that Madden did not possess any inherent rights. Despite the fact that there can never be a full comprehension of what took place in that cell, Derek Sweden argued that the jury needed to take into consideration whether or not the incident was premeditated or deliberate. Number 1. Jamie Izuna. In the end, the jury found him guilty of the first-degree, second-degree murder of Jamie Izuna. Judge Randy Edwards of Kings County made this decision after hearing testimony from 2 psychiatrists who concluded that Jamie Izuna did not understand the criminal proceedings against him and could not assist his legal team in preparing a defense. Izuna was found guilty of killing a woman in Bakersfield in 2011, and he is now being held in a company meant to stand trial for the murder of his cellmate. The criminal proceedings have been stayed until Izuna, who is 32 years old, is deemed competent. Izuna is charged with using a homemade knife to decapitate and dissect his cellmate Romero, taking out the man's lung, a finger, and an eye. Romero, who served 27 years in prison, was allegedly put in the same cell as Izuna when he was released from Your Creek State Prison as a teenager. Izuna was found guilty of second-degree murder after shooting a woman in Compton while hanging out with gang members. He was on the verge of being eligible for parole when, on March 9, 2019, Izuna killed and tortured Romero with a handle-equipped razor-style blade. After severing Romero's head, Izuna posed the corpse by severing Romero's face open on both sides of his mouth to simulate a wide smile. God discovered Izuna with a necklace made of pieces of Romero's body. Romero's family filed a complaint, claiming that the guards neglected to perform a thorough search since the cell bars were covered in a white sheet. The reports did not elaborate on why the cops did not discover the graphic scenes sooner. If you've watched this far, please share your thoughts in the comments box below for more fascinating subjects. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.